So I just realized that y'all can't see anything, and that was my bad. So I'm gonna have to do I just went through a whole spiel. I'm gonna have to do it all again. So I'm sorry about that. These are learning things, but at least I got to practice my monologue. Thank you, Ellie Watkins, in the chat for saying that, because I was about to go into grading this first paper. All right, so let's pretend that none of this happened. Okay, I'm gonna go to the intro graphic, and I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna pretend this never happened. All right, welcome, English 1101, to this live stream. A couple of things before we start. First of all, this is not my first time doing a live stream. I am a musician in North Georgia. I play a lot of bar shows and stuff in the pre-COVID world, and when COVID happened, all of the music kind of went online. If you're a musician, you know what I'm talking about. But what happened is I had to learn how to use Streams OBS. So I have a lot of knowledge with this software, and even though it's going to seem like I'm a crazy person that designed all of this just for the class, a lot of this stuff was already designed, including that opening graphic. So, a couple of housekeeping things before we start. If anyone else is having volume issues, let me know. Okay, cool. It might just be you, Lily. Okay, a couple things before we start. First of all, I will be catching up with grading on Thursday. So I've mentioned this to y'all several times. I am like in the midst of writing my thesis for grad school, and grading takes the back seat to pretty much everything. On Thursday, we will not have class. Your paper is due on Thursday. What's also going to happen on Thursday is I'm going to catch up with everything that y'all have submitted up to this point. Okay. So that's that. If you don't have grades on Thursday, on Friday, let me know, and I'll see what's going on. But all of you should kind of have an understanding of what's going on with your grade by then. Second thing is, if you haven't already, I saw a lot of people signed in. Please sign up for conferences. I'm going to show you really quick. Let me get out of this. Oops, wrong thing. Cool. On D2L, I posted an announcement. There's a link right here that says link to sign up for conferences. There's instructions here on kind of what I'm expecting, but the main point that I want y'all to take away from this is your grade for the first paper is contingent on you meeting with me next week for conferences. We're not going to have class next week. So the only thing, and there's no readings or anything, the only thing that you need to do next week is find a time that works for you for conferences and come to it. If there is a time, and some of y'all will see this, I can't scroll down because it has your names on there, and there's just some FERPA stuff with streaming to YouTube that I can't show. But if there's like a time that you really need and it's all taken and there's no other times, please email me, because I will find a way to work around your schedule. I have a pretty flexible schedule, so I'm not too worried about not finding a time. But please do not blow this off. If you can't find a time, you need to find a time. And the conferences, I have them set to like 15-minute increments, but it's only going to be maybe a 5-minute thing. So no worries there. Second thing, or wait, no, that was the second thing. Third thing is a couple of things. See, a lot of y'all don't know this, but I already went through all of these things because I thought I was streaming and I didn't press go live. So I feel like I'm having some pretty bad deja vu right now. we got to go over some basic ground rules for this, because this is going to be one of several times I'll do a live stream in this class. The first thing is, even though this is being streamed to YouTube, not on D2L, not on Teams, not on Zoom, don't say anything in the chat that you wouldn't want KSU to know. I mean, you're all adults. I don't really care what y'all do in the chat. It's fine. But I am using this as an artifact for my master's thesis. And so, only ask questions, related to the paper, or, talk about things that you wouldn't be scared talking to KSU about. And yes, Lily, for the conferences, you just put your name in. That's all you need. So the second thing is, and I might have already just said this, as I'm going through these papers in just a second, feel free to ask me anything at any time. That's why I have this chat set up. I can see it, unlike when we're on Microsoft Teams. I can see everything. I think there's only a 7-second delay. So please ask me questions. That's what this is all about. Okay. I've got to switch over to the first paper. Just a reminder, if you don't remember what this is all about, we had a couple of people bravely and selflessly volunteer to finish their papers early so I could grade them in real time. I've anonymized all the papers that I'm about to go over. So if it is your paper that I pull up, don't say, "Oh my gosh, that's my paper," in the chat, because I feel like the anonymous aspect of it kind of helps people understand conceptually what I'm looking for with the paper, and it also doesn't feel like I'm personalizing the papers. So if it's your paper, don't say anything. is what I'm saying. All right, I've got this cool transition that I'm going to pull up while I'm switching to the first paper. If anyone has any questions about what's happening, please ask me during this time. This transition took me about 30 minutes to make, so I really hope you appreciate it. All right. Well, it just stopped. That's weird. Cool. All right, so we got paper 1 pulled up. This is a paper by student 1 of 3 students, and the title of this paper is "Let Me Set the Record Straight." Like I told y'all, I don't grade on titles, and so to the student that wrote this, good job playing it safe. But also, if any of y'all want to take a risk and have an interesting, clever title, feel free to do that. Totally up to you. So the first thing I do when I do grade anything is I attach, and I'm going to scroll down the bottom so y'all can see it. I attach the rubric to the paper. This is so when I'm grading, I can go down and tally things in real time. So all of y'all will receive a paper that has this attached to it, and I'm going to be using my iPad to grade them. So it'll all be kind of handwritten. The first thing I do, it's the easiest thing to do when I'm grading a paper, is I check for Mla Style, because I'm not asking for citations on this paper. It's pretty easy to check formatting. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top. As you can see, students has the identifying information in the correct spots. The date is correct. It looks like the header is correct as well, though it is hard for me to check that on my iPad. Let's see. Margins look good. There's no spaces in between paragraphs. There's a 1/2-inch indent that starts every paragraph. And like I requested, the ending memo is at the end. And they stopped and tabbed into it, or I'm sorry, page break into a new page at the end. So everything on this front looks good. I'm going to go ahead and give them an A on Mla Style because I know there's nothing really to worry about there. The other things, obviously, I have to read. So let's start from paragraph 1. In fact, even though this is slightly illegal, I feel like because I'm streaming this as an education stream and not an entertainment stream, I'm allowed to listen to music. So I got some lo-fi chill hop beats to relax/study to 24/7, which is the best grading and studying music. All right. Some lo-fi real-time grading. This is ridiculous, but I'm going to do it anyways. Let me set the record straight. I feel that I must address the pretentious rumors that have been circulating the community for weeks. First of all, I would like to thank my staff here at Turner & Co. that has stood with me even in what seems to be the worst at times. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Cool. Anyone who works with me or knows me personally knows that I would never do anything that I thought could hurt others. As a CEO and as a man, I continually strive to listen to others and understand them so that perhaps I can become a stronger leader and connect with people individually. I built this company from the ground up and worked tirelessly to be as fair as possible to the consumers, the employees, and the community. As the company's success and profit grows, I've spread the wealth to this community like no large corporation has ever done before. At Amazon, at Jeff Bezos. I've spread the wealth. The reason I bring this up to you to remind you of my character before I make. The reason I bring this up to you is to remind you of my character before I make a confession. Recently, the internet hacker group known as Shadow, I love that, has threatened to ruin my reputation by spreading a rumor that has been distorted by lies and personal ambition. This is why I feel I must bring the unabridged truth to the public in an act of transparency and honesty. Okay, so let's talk about this first paragraph. So there's a reason why I intentionally did not get into paragraph structure and things like that with this first paper. It's a teaching move. I don't want to give y'all any indication of how I feel a paper should be structured. The entire purpose of this paper is to kind of see what you already are bringing to the table as a student. So there's two things that, and I'm going to bring this up in future classes, especially with future papers. There's two paragraphs that are extremely important in an academic paper. The first one is the intro, obviously, and the second one is the outro. The best analogy I can give you, first of all, this is a great opening paragraph, and I'll explain why in just a second. The best analogy I can give you is to think of paragraphs as episodes of a larger season. Let's say you're watching a new show on Netflix, and you watch the pilot first episode and you don't like it. What are the odds of you continuing to watch that show? Probably 0, right? Unless Netflix does that thing where it automatically plays the next episode before you can stop it, which is like what happens to me every single time. But if the first paragraph isn't setting up something called exigence, and we'll get into this in the second paper, then to me, it's not worth reading. Exigence is a very fancy way of saying who gives a shit. If the paper doesn't have exigence, there's not a reason why the reader should give a shit, right? This is how this writer sets up exigence. First sentence, I feel that I must address the pretentious rumors that have been circulating the community for weeks. So right off the bat, I know that there's something going down, right? And then there's this buildup of character where the writer is talking about this fake company that they created. And so it's given me a sense of the scale of things, right? This is a company that's very large. And then towards the end, the internet hacker known as Shadow has threatened my reputation with a rumor that is distorted by lies and personal ambition. This is why I feel the need to bring this to the public. So this first paragraph sets up why should I give a shit? 1, there's rumors circulating around. 2, it involves a very large fake company, right? So there's some scale to this. And 3, they're being blackmailed. All of this is set up in the first paragraph. So as a reader, I know, okay, this is why I should give a shit moving forward. So let's look at paragraph 2. I was forcibly removed from Costco 10 years ago. To be entirely truthful, I don't know why I made such a poor decision. I'm sure, however, that you will understand my frustration by the end of this story. It was a cool winter day as I strolled into Costco. I had just turned 16 and was purchasing a new computer as I was approaching college and needed a reliable computer. I felt on top of the world. Driving independently and getting a new laptop was simply the dream. My only worry was that I was there without my parents, and technically, to make the purchase, they needed to be there. I asked my parents, and they even encouraged me to get it myself. Okay, that's good. So, seeing as me and my dad had the same name, and therefore the card could have just as easily belonged to me, I made my way into the store. I found the computer I wished to purchase and made my way into the checkout line. Little did I know that a seemingly insignificant mistake would result in such an embarrassing action. Hold on. I got to give you the praise here. This is another way to establish this exigence, okay? He's not the writer is not revealing really why this story is embarrassing just yet. We're setting up, just like any good story, you want this rising action, right? You want there to be this sense of the conflict building up slowly over time. You don't want to tell the reader everything up front because then, again, why are they reading it? Right here, this ending line, little did I know a seemingly insignificant mistake would result in such an embarrassing action. Perfect setup for me to keep moving, right? There's this little breadcrumb that makes me say, what seemingly insignificant mistake? Okay. Paragraph 3. When I reached the front of the line, I handed the cashier my card and the item I wanted to purchase. He then looked at the card and then to me and said, the guy on this card looks middle-aged and this couldn't be you. Are you Jonathan? Oh, no. No, Jonathan, why? Just blur that out of your mind. You didn't see that. Are you student 1? Can't believe I missed that. Are you student 1? I casually replied. Yeah, but it's my dad's membership card. He then explained that he needed to speak to his manager first. It was at this moment that I knew something was about to go horribly wrong. A wave of anxiety washed over me. I felt I felt like the world's worst criminal. Even though at worst I committed a very minor violation of the Costco rules. I like that line. I reminded myself of this as the employee began to come back with his manager and, to my surprise, a police officer. Oh no. In a monotone voice, the employee told me I could never return to any of their locations and I would have to be brought to a nearby police station to wait on bail. Wait, hold up, I remarked. Are you serious? Entirely, said the manager. And with that remark, I was handcuffed and rather roughly brought to the police car and brought to the station, where shortly thereafter I was released on a small bail. As you can see, this incident was nothing malicious, but rather a misunderstanding where the punishment did not fit the crime at all. Especially as a minor, I shouldn't have been detained for trying to use my parents' membership card with their explicit permission. The reason I had to come clean is because Shadow is threatening to tell everyone that I was a scam artist that took control of the accounts and sold that information to the dark web. As you can see, that is not even a believable lie, and I felt I must bring the full, unabridged truth to the public. Okay, so this is a little bit of a long paragraph, but I understand why, conceptually. Like I said, this second paragraph is giving me the breadcrumb that makes me want to know what conflict is going on. This entire third paragraph is the conflict. So from the story, we know that he's being accused of using a fake ID or using a false identity. It's probably a better way to put it. And he was arrested. So we also don't know from this paragraph the gravity of this situation and how it influenced his life, which we're going to get into in just a second. Yes, I regret the action that I took so many years ago, but I find that my treatment has been far beyond unfair given an incident that is not even on record. The fact is, a hacker group shouldn't have had access to this kind of information, and the fact that the incident still haunts me 10 years later and from multiple sources is entirely ridiculous. This could have all been prevented if it had just been handled quietly and internally in a fair way. I say this as a call to action. Good. This kind of behavior toward minors at Costco is entirely unacceptable. I call all members with any sort of moral judgment to boycott the store until an internal review and investigation is completed. Me and my fellow laborers and warriors for justice at Turner & Co. will not stand for this kind of treatment, and that is why our company is taking part in an annual ethics review and investigation that examines every facet of our company. Good. Never again should an insignificant mistake of a child haunt someone for the rest of their life. My thanks goes out to everyone for understanding. And if Costco's executives are reading this, my fight against your injustice is over. Okay, so there is one small issue that I have with this, because this is extremely well written. No grammar issues at all. There wasn't a time where I stopped and said, this seems like it's not working. Sentence variation is great. The author stays on point with the story. He doesn't drift off, right? Everything is about this incident at Costco. The only connection that I don't see happening here is why this particular incident, it seems like it was very minor, right? It seems like he was kind of just put in the back of a police car and then everything was worked out later on. So I'm not exactly sure why that would affect the fictional author all these years later. And so for that, I'm going to have to use my Tobey Maguire. Wow, that's way more intense than I thought it would be. For that, I will say there needs to be some kind of connection here. We need to understand why this fictional celebrity, I guess this would be a fictional CEO, would feel shame or regret about this thing, especially if there were no actual legal consequences outside of just sitting in the back of a police car. So let's look at his memo and just see if he addresses this. Rhetoric was an integral piece of my paper, as I considered the audience, author, context, and message to get my message across. First of all, the fictional version of myself who authored this piece was a hardworking CEO who cares about his community and even shares the wealth of his company. So I saw that very clearly. Good job there. By setting myself up as a kind of hardworking man, I believe I was able to convince the audience that a felony was completely uncharacteristic and therefore I must have been wronged. So you say felony here. Let me go back and look. Released on a small bail. I don't see anything about a felony here. So maybe it's as simple as making that connection. Maybe to the writer, instead of released on a small bail, I was released on a small bail and charged with a felony, right? Secondly, I knew the audience would most likely be to people in the company or people affiliated with the company in some way. So this is an internal message. That would also be the kind of the context. So good job there. And I felt that too. Knowing the audience was invested, I shifted the blame to Costco. Good. Additionally, I spent a large part of the paper focused entirely on the context by drawing them in with a detailed account of what actually happened. Finally, I finished my paper by bringing about a concise, detailed message and call to action. After convincing the audience of my innocence, I turned them against an external enemy and set myself up as a warrior for justice and the people. Sure, I believe it, but also that's a little... I could see it, but it's a bit of a stretch. I'd say maybe you just cleared your reputation with your company and maybe in the public eye. Because Costco is set up as a villain in this story, but not a villain necessarily that was that continues to perpetrate these alleged crimes. Genre conventions also had an important role in my work. I used precise words and sentence structure to give my paper a formal diction and a strong syntax. I also made a point to have serious informal tone in the first half of the paper. I kept the paper to 2.5 pages, as a drawn-out paper would cause the audience to lose interest. Right. As I began to touch more on the message of the paper, I switched my tone to be more angry to incite the same frustration within my readers. Good. I carefully selected my use of rhetoric and genre conventions to drive home my innocence with the reader. Okay. So one thing I want to say about this is great, but there's not a lot of specifics when we get into the genre conventions, okay? I use precise words and sentence structure to give my paper formal diction and a strong syntax. Where? I could see it, but I need you to point to an example. I also made a point to have a serious and formal tone in the first half of my paper, such as blah, 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 blah. I kept the paper at 2.5 pages and blah, 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 blah. I think the rest of it is good. Because you're talking about the paper as a whole. When you're getting into these specifics in your memo, especially if you're going to talk about genre conventions, you need to point me to an example of that. Because to me, that's what I'm looking for. And in the example paper that I showed you all, I was looking for that as well. So, first of all, I want to see in the chat, for anyone that's still there, look at this graphic.
All right, then keep
your Here we
secrets.
go. What grade do we think this is? What grade would you give it? I know you weren't completely anonymized author, but, you know, we tried. Oh, wait, that's right. There's like a 7-second delay, so it's going to take me a second to see what y'all say. Yeah, I'm seeing some A's in here. I do agree. This is where I'm scoring it. So I think the paper is super focused, super logical. It stays on point the whole time, and there's a closing memo that kind of supports it in general. Organization, great. Paragraphs are kind of evenly distributed. They're all meaningful, and they all are kind of doing their own thing. There isn't a point where a paragraph seems to cut off short or it seems to drag on for too long. The only place where I really took off notes was in the genre conventions, because, again, I want y'all to be specific. I want y'all to be super specific. When you say I use formal diction, when you say I had a formal tone, show me in the paper where that happened, okay? Grammar, no issues there. Great job, writer. If I were going to grade this, I would give it an A, but I'd probably give it like a low to mid-range A, maybe like a 94. Because really the only points are going to come off of this middle section. So 94 is like an A plus / minus, I think. All right. Good job, student number 1. All right, let me pull up the next paper. Give it just a sec. Okay. Let me get this set up. Oh wow, I didn't know the animation stopped. It's really, I guess it adds to the theme. It's loading. I think we only have time to do maybe one more because of my unfortunate realization that I wasn't actually streaming for about 10 minutes. All right. Okay, so we got this from student number 2. I'm going to show y'all again kind of how I start papers. Again, every paper is going to have the rubric attached to the bottom when I grade it. So that's where you should look if you're wondering why you got a certain grade. Okay, so let's start with Mla Style. There's something that's super noticeable right off the bat, and that's that it's missing headers. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that. Everything else seems to be fairly good, though. Title is in the right place. Paragraphs aren't separated by spaces. The identifying information is correctly ordered. The date is good. And the memo's on its own separate page. So I don't think there's any issues there, but because there's no headers, I'm going to give this section a 9 out of 10. Oh my goodness, that was horrible. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. That one point, though, you know, it's an easy thing to put the headers on, but that one point could be the difference, you know, between a B and an A. So you don't want to forget small things like that. All right, so this paper is titled "The Script of My Apology to My Fans." Due to recent events, I feel obligated to apologize to my audience and my fans. As a member of the TikTok community, most of you know by now that I've made quite a big mistake and I cannot take it back. I'm getting some real like Logan Paul vibes with this right off the top. I now mistake and I cannot take it back. So I will, whenever I grade for grammar, I'm not really going to explain what I'm doing until the end. So if you see me marking it, just know that I will get back to that unless one of y'all has a question about one of the markings that I'm making. Someone who recognized me from TikTok and does not like me decided to blackmail me and try to ruin my career. Unfortunately, the other day I hugged the wrong person, and with all that is happening right now, with the pandemic, my ex has decided to completely twist the story and make it seem like I was meant to intrude on her 6-foot personal bubble space. This is definitely not the case, and I needed to come on here to clarify that. Unfortunately, the other day I hugged the wrong person, and with all okay, so this is what's called an appositive phrase. I'm going to get into some of the grammar stuff later on in the semester. Again, I wasn't really kind of getting on a micro level with y'all for this first paper because it's meant to kind of see where y'all are at as writers. But there are a couple of grammar mistakes in here. The other thing too is the sense of like I was saying with the other paper, first paragraph should set up the sense of exigence, which again means, why should I give a shit? It's a cool $20 word to throw around at Thanksgiving because no one knows what it means. But after reading this first paper, my sense of what is the exigence with this paper, it seems like it's a famous TikToker who's having drama with their significant other or ex-significant other and something to do with COVID. It's intriguing. I will say that. There's a sense of me wanting to figure out what's happening next, but there's not a clear sense of why I should give a shit just yet. And, you know, just to let y'all know, and I hate to keep saying this, but we will get into this later in the semester. Not every paper is the same. Not every rhetorical situation is the same. The first paragraph doesn't have to do the exact same thing in this paper that it did in the last paper, right? In the paper that I just read, the first paragraph kind of clearly set up that there was a blackmail situation involving the CEO of a company, and the tone was kind of structured around an internal memo. This one is setting up kind of a blackmail situation, but not through a shadowy hacker group, through an ex significant other. So different circumstances, right? And to give the writer credit, I feel like if I were writing about something malicious that my ex-girlfriend did, I would be pretty emotional. So it would be hard to kind of come across clearly like what's going on. All right, so let's look at the second paragraph. The story starts out with my mom and I going to TJ Maxx, my favorite place to shop. I go, maybe there's a comma here or an M dash. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. I go here quite often, like once a week, and when I go, I always feel so welcomed by the employees and staff because they all know me. I normally go alone, but this day I wanted to bring my mom. She and I both walk into the store together and are shopping around. She and I are both walk into the store and are shopping around. Is it dependent? Is it independent? I'm trying to think. I think this is an independent clause, but if it's not, I'll come back to that. As I am walking into the tops, my mom had slipped away and went to look at shoes. As I continued to look at the tops, a woman approaches. She is a few feet away and I could only see her back. In my mind, I thought it was my mother. She was the same height and same hair. Since there are not many people in the store, I assumed it was my mom. As this was happening, I found this cute top. The top was quite expensive, and I did not really want to pay for it. Me being the person I am, went to coddle my mom to convince her to buy it for me. I was still thinking this person was my mom. So I go and hug her from behind. She quickly whips up around and starts yelling at me. I was absolutely mortified. I was apologizing profusely and tried to explain to her that I thought she was my mom and that I didn't mean to offend her. After she had yelled for a while, many heads were turned. Then I realized who I was. She realized who I was. There we go. She then yelled even more and took out her phone and was recording me as she continued to yell at me. Let's cut that. This is the video most of you saw of me. The video, okay, here we go. This is where the connection is made. The video portrayed that I did something wrong on purpose. As you all saw in the video, the woman was coming very close to me to make it seem like I was still in her space when this was not the case. There were many people in the store that witnessed this go down and know that what I had done was an accident. Unfortunately, during these times, we have to all be respectful of others' space, and I feel as though if we were not in a pandemic, this would never have occurred. Interesting. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit before we move on, because this is a pretty long paragraph. I want y'all to see this. This starts about halfway through page 1 and ends about halfway through page 2. So it's about a page-long paragraph, give or take. And you saw kind of in the middle of that is when I kind of got the point of why this story is being told, right? This is the video most of you saw of me. Let me look at the beginning of this. So it is the saving grace here is that the author starts out by saying the story starts with this. So we know we're going into a narrative here. If the author didn't say the story starts out like this and just said one day my mom and I were going into TJ Maxx, it would feel a little disjointed because from this opening paragraph, I'm expecting this big TikToker, right? I'm expecting this celebrity status TikToker, and I want that to be fairly consistent throughout. But because the author says the story starts out, we know that it's the TikToker reflecting on the past. So there's goods. I will say to the writer, I would work on condensing some of these sensory details, like she was the same height. I thought it was my mom. She's a few feet away and I could see her. Only because I'm reading these things and it's not that I'm uninterested in it. It's just I'm wondering why it matters just yet, right? And I don't really get a sense of why it matters until this sentence right here. This is the video most of you saw of me. So one of my suggestions for this, if we're going to set up exigence, is that the author moves this piece of information right here all the way up kind of closer to the top. So maybe saying, many of you may have seen a video circulating of me, and that you don't even have to say you were hugging a random lady. Many people may have seen a video of me that paints me in the light of someone that's not taking COVID seriously. Here's what actually happened. The story starts out with my mom and I going to TJ Maxx, so on and so forth, right? That way, as a reader, we know, okay, so this is something that was caught on video, but in the back of our minds, we also know that logically, the fictional author wasn't doing anything wrong. I don't really know, as I was reading up until this point, I didn't really know what I should be looking out for, right? Is what's wrong and what's not wrong. I didn't even take into account COVID in my mind because I don't think it's even set up here. Oh yeah, you do say intrude on her 6-foot personal bubble space. I would say that's fine. The COVID references there, totally cool. It makes sense to the story and it gives a reason for people to be mad at you. But I really am strongly sticking my feet in the sand to say that I think this paragraph needs to start off with kind of introducing the reason, the context as to why people are upset. There's a video that leaked, right? And then here's what happened. So overall, good paragraph. Like I said, maybe some of these sensory details could be cut a little because there are a lot of them. But if you address this in the memo, I'm not going to get upset. If something is intentional on purpose, I can't get upset because at least you know that you're doing it. All right, let's read the last two paragraphs. Let me get a drink, actually. There are no words that it can explain my embarrassment and shame for my actions. As you know now, it was a complete accident, and it was not meant to be a crime of hate or disrespect. If I could take back what I did, I would, because that would save me from having to explain to everyone, every one of you. Oh wait, no, you right, author. Those are two separate words in this case. To explain to every one of you that this was all just a misunderstanding. Since I have the platform I do, I will always have people that do not like me for who I am, even though I try to be a nice, loving person to all. Some people just have bad days, and some are just mean. I do not know if this woman was having a bad day or was purposely trying to sabotage me by making me seem like a bad person. I will forgive this woman because I do not know her or know what is going on in her life right now. We should all give grace to thoughts around us because you will never know if they just need to pick someone up, if they just need someone to pick up their day with a smile or a kind gesture. I'm going to come back to that. This does not change that I should have been more aware of my surroundings and be more aware that others are more sensitive to the pandemic and are super strict on following social distancing guidelines put in place by the CDC. I think this is actually, hold on, I'm going to give you some praise here, author. I have SpongeBob worship this paragraph. This is probably the most cohesive paragraph yet, because it kind of stays on point. The first sentence is, there are no words that can explain my embarrassment or shame. It was a complete accident. It was not meant to be a crime. If I could take it back, I would. So it's very apologetic, right? And also a little humble, right? We should all give grace to thoughts around us because you never know if they just need someone to pick up their day with a kind smile or gesture. This does not change that I should have been more aware, right? So on and so forth. So apologetic all around. You start in an apology and you end in an apology, but you do give yourself a little bit of room to kind of say, hey, give me the benefit of the doubt here. So this is a great paragraph. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge that anyone who knows me knows that I would never want to purposely try to hurt someone or make them feel uncomfortable. All of you who follow me and know my platform on TikTok know that my page is about spreading love and kindness. My true fans who saw that and thought I was purposely trying to offend that woman, I'm so sorry for making you feel all I have said before was hypocritical. It was not fair of that woman to post that video or to react the way that she did, but that does not right my actions I made that day. For all of you who are fairly new to my page, I'm sorry that the image of me was darkened due to that video. Good. I hope that this message helped you realize that all of this was fake news and someone trying to stir up something that was completely unnecessary and uncalled for. I love all of you deeply and will work harder on being more aware of others. Thank you all for your support and kindness to me during these weird times. And thank you all who didn't believe the made up stories to begin with, because you know who I really am. Okay, so yes, this is good. This is on brand because I'm about to read your memo. It seems like something a TikToker would say, to be honest with you. And I really can't separate. I know I'm sure y'all kind of grew up in the Vine generation, but I was in high school when Vine was huge, in early college when Vine was huge. And so I always think of Logan Paul in my head when I think of famous TikTokers for some reason. So I could totally see Logan Paul doing this, right? I'm apologetic, but also I just want to thank my fans who didn't believe the BS, right? That's a good way to end it off. I will say, before we get into the memo, I want to talk about organization really quick, because I think might be where this one loses points. First one is setting up exigence. Second paragraph is explaining the story. The third paragraph is maybe apologizing for the actions. And the fourth is also kind of reassuring the fan base that what happened wasn't intentional, and that people that actually know this fictional celebrity know that they weren't being intentional. But I feel like there could be some work done to rearrange this in a way that some of these, I think, and I'm going to read the memo in just a second before I give a raw reaction. But I think that the kind of Logan Paul brazenness of saying hey, all of my fans know that I'm okay and that I didn't mean to do this, could be sprinkled a little bit more throughout. And then that way you could have more structured sections that say okay, here's what happened in this story. Here's why it was a misunderstanding. Here's why I'm sorry, right? I think the second paragraph in particular kind of combines a lot of elements of the story at once, or things that you're trying to say. So by the time I get to this third and fourth paragraph, it feels like I've already read these things. It feels like I've already heard you say I'm sorry and things like that. If you're able to say yes, I'm sorry, but to the people that really know me know it's not a big deal, then some of this stuff is going to flow a little bit better in my mind. So let's give the writer the benefit of the doubt, though, before we just assume things. Okay, so the four key components of a rhetorical situation are the purpose, the message, the audience, and the voice. All right, so I'm gonna have to Tobey Maguire you right here. No, that's not true. So, rhetorical situation: author, audience, message, and context. Okay? These first three things, the author and audience and the message, meet in the context. The context justifies the genre conventions. And that's all y'all need to remember. Okay? There's nothing else that necessarily needs to be remembered about the rhetorical situation. But the voice is kind of attached to genre conventions and isn't part of the four key components of the rhetorical situation. So to the writer, make sure that you're getting that right specifically, because this is a huge part of your grade. I will say that message is also sometimes called purpose. It's sometimes called intention. Doesn't matter what you call it, but right here, this essay is a formal apology essay from a famous TikToker to their fans. The essay portrays all of these components. The purpose of this letter is to apologize to their fans and try to make what they did seem wrong, like it was all a misunderstanding. So you see, if you replace purpose with message or intention, it means the exact same thing. So good job there. It did feel like an apology letter. And it also seemed like you were trying to set the record straight, not to quote my own paper. The message of a rhetorical situation is exactly what the writer is what exactly the writer is hoping to get across. So I think that's attached to that, so it's a little redundant here. In this apology letter, the message is to get across to the audience what occurred in TJ Maxx was all a misunderstanding. They'll work harder, being more respectful to others around him. Okay, again, you kind of already said that up here. So it's a bit redundant right there. The audience is the fan base of the TikToker. It is also anyone who saw the video and thought badly of the TikToker. Good. Lastly, the voice is, I removed your name. That's what that is. Unlike the last one where I accidentally left the writer's name in at one part. The famous TikToker who invaded the woman's personal space during the pandemic. All of these points tie together to create a well-rounded rhetorical situation in the text above. Sometimes rhetorical situations are subtle. Sometimes they're quite noticeable, but each element is very important to creating a well-rounded argument, or in this case, an apology letter. I don't know what that means, but there's a couple of things that are missing. One is genre conventions and specifics, and also the context. Like, hold on, let me just make sure I'm not. So it is a letter, formal apology essay, but where would this be seen? Is it if it's a TikToker, wouldn't it be maybe on like Twitter or maybe on TikTok or whatever? I'm trying to think of where exactly this would make sense to be in, but you do need to think about that. And if it's not going to be on social media, say, oh, this is like a PR statement that was put out because I'm a celebrity. So there are a couple of things missing in this memo. Before I get into the grading, I'm gonna have to ask the class. And this is again why I anonymize. Remember, if your paper is being read, because this is the last one we have time to do today. If your paper is being read for volunteer papers, it's anonymized, one, so the class doesn't know, but two, so you can do revisions on the paper, right? I want you as the writer to fix some of these issues that I brought up. But what do we think? What do we think, y'all? I'm gonna be calculating while y'all type it in. All right, hold on. Let me use my calculator. I'm going to show you this in real time too, so y'all can kind of understand what I do when I grade your papers. All right. So let's see what we got in the chat. We got some low B's. Someone got super specific, said 78. Mid B's, C, low B, B. So a lot of B's. I'll show you where I kind of landed. Oh, wait. It's not a C. I'm sorry. It is a B. It's a low B, though. I'm going to kind of break this down for you. First, I want to talk about there were a lot of grammar issues, and I feel like that's because the writer knew this was a rough draft and didn't do a double pass. So a lot of comma problems. I kind of stopped writing them down once I got into the third paragraph because it was the same consistency. I think I probably should do a lesson on clauses because I think it's something that a lot of people don't fully understand. But when you're attaching independent clauses together in a sentence, you're always going to put a comma there. If you're using an introductory clause at the beginning of a sentence, you always put a comma there. And so there were a lot of times where you were forgetting these commas. And it was just very consistent on the comma front. There's also some misspellings, but I'm attributing that to it being a rough draft. So I'm not going too hard on that. So on the grammar side of things, I gave you a 7 out of 10 because the commas were fairly consistent. But there were 3 different issues that I saw. And like I told y'all, I don't keep marking down for the same mistakes, but it was 3 separate things. It was commas separating independent clauses. It was commas for introductory clauses, and it was commas to attach dependent clauses at the end of a sentence. I don't know if any of that makes sense. We'll probably should have a whole day dedicated to commas because I used to do that. This is my first semester teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I kind of have to crunch things together sometimes. As far as genre conventions and rhetorical awareness, this is where the most points were lost because if you read where I marked, it says, the writer demonstrates adequate awareness of audience and genre, making somewhat consistent decisions throughout the paper that reflect an understanding of rhetorical awareness, but also containing inconsistencies that might distract readers. So like when I was pointing out, sometimes it felt apologetic, sometimes it felt like Logan Paul, sometimes it felt like this and that. That's totally fine for you to jump around from perspectives, but there was never a time in the memo where the author said, this is the reason why I was taking this tone. This is why I was being apologetic here. This is why I was doing this here. And also with genre conventions, there were just no genre conventions that were talked about in the memo. So there were the most points lost there. Organization, I docked a couple of points there because of that second paragraph. It kind of felt like it was lingering a little too long and a little rambly as opposed to the other paragraphs. And that's the thing. If you have one bad paragraph and all of your other paragraphs are really good, it's going to make that bad one stand out so much more. And then I think the paper was pretty good as far as the development. You were fairly consistent throughout, so I didn't have that much there. I just took off points for the questions that I had raised as I was grading. So all in all, you landed on an 81B. And I hope y'all understand kind of how this works. Like I dock points based on how many times I kind of see an error happening. So it's 309. That's all I have time for this one. A couple of just reminders before I end this live stream. Remember that you should sign up for conferences. 1, your paper's due on Thursday by class time. So by 2 p.m., the paper needs to be submitted on D2L. I'm going to go in and open up the submission now. And so conference, paper. Oh, yes. Third thing, if you do have any questions about papers and want to meet with me for a conference, I will be fairly available tomorrow and this afternoon. So shoot me an email. Other than that, if you submitted, thank you so much. Very valuable for you and the class to kind of see how this works. And just know for future papers, you get 5 points. So if this writer submitted this paper right now, as it is, without changing anything, they would actually have an 86, not an 81, because of the +5 bonus points. So keep that in mind, y'all. Volunteering your paper isn't the worst thing in the world. Other than that, I'm going to end it. Thank you all for hanging out, and good luck writing your papers. Let me know if you need anything.